Today, yes, we're getting into this conversation here. How do we actually track and record these things? I don't know if you had a system before you hopped on this call. Everybody has a system, so you do have a system, regardless of whether or not it's distinct or clear. You have a system in place. You're going on the load board, you're booking loads, and activities being created, and you may have receipts that are piling up inside of a folder or a shoebox. I don't know. Or you may have something like a QuickBooks. You may have something like a TMS that you're using to run your business, and you may not. All right, and if you don't, there's a gap there. Even if you do, there are still gaps. I guarantee it. Because this is a constant process of filling gaps, getting present to where we are and constantly filling gaps, and how we're actually recording and seeing and viewing and monitoring our business activities so that we can improve it along the way. Okay. So we're going to start this conversation right now. How to track and record. And you see all these things up here, like, man, these guys got a lot of different, what do you call it, logos up here. Who's familiar? Let me see your virtual hand or real hand. Are you familiar with any of these logos? And if so, what logo are you familiar with?
Just the QuickBooks only.
Okay, gotcha, Baxter. QuickBooks is familiar. Yes, that's very popular among small businesses, probably the most popular among small businesses in the world, QuickBooks. Okay, and QuickBooks there's one thing up here that's universal to any business. I said, there's a couple of things up here, like Xero is also universal to any business. That's also another accounting software. Sage, universal to any business. That's another accounting software, okay? So the other ones that are showing up here that are not Sage, that are not QuickBooks, not Xero, they are distinct to the trucking industry, okay? So who else? Anybody else familiar with any of these other logos in here before we move on? Raise your virtual hand or your real hand. Okay, so nobody's familiar with any of these other ones, huh? That is interesting. What'd you say, Teresa?
Trucking office.
Trucking office. Okay, yeah. Yeah, that's one. That's pretty decent. You know what? Trucking office is what we call a TMS. Okay, and we're going to get into that shortly. And trucking office is pretty decent, although I haven't really used it for any of the fleets that I work with. Most people that I work with don't really use trucking office. I am familiar with it, and I haven't really used it in depth. But from what I've seen, it's pretty decent TMS. It's been around for a while. It might be a little older, but it's decent. Right? And if you're not familiar with a lot of these other softwares, like these TMS applications, you really want to get familiar with these. You really want to see how you're going to move into managing your business through one of these or another version of a TMS that fits for what you're up to inside of your business. Okay. And I see you, Pearlie, and I saw you see QuickBooks up there. You're familiar with that. Yeah. Fantastic. And let's look at what we have in the way of, what it is that we're going to record and what we're going to track. Okay. So we talk about tracking, recording things. Like, what is it that we're going to track? This is something that you want to have in mind before you even start looking at, trucking management softwares, accounting software. You really have your mindset in the realm of thinking that, there are things that I need to track and monitor inside of my business. Without question, there are things that I need to monitor and things I need to track. Why? Because if I don't track these things, I'm not going to have access to next level results. I want to have access to next level results because I won't see what's going on distinctly. I won't be able to tell what's going on. I'll have a general idea and it won't be clear. The more clear I am on understanding what's impacting my business, because I'm tracking and recording it, the more I'll have an edge inside of my business over the competition, because I guarantee there are other people that are not in this call that aren't really present, are not really tracking, and they're not very clear. So if you get clear, that's an edge. That's the edge that the publicly traded trucking companies have. Everything is tracked, everything's monitored. There's a standard procedure for everything, a workflow for everything, to make sure that they have eyes on what's impacting their business down to the penny. How serious are you about this? Okay, so this is what you want to start doing inside of your business if you're not doing it already. And if you're doing it already, how can you get better at doing it? What more can you track? How can you better leverage and lean on the systems inside of your business to see what's happening? So yeah, you definitely want to see the number of loads that you pull, right? Because here's the thing. I'm working with somebody and they have drivers that they're hiring, you know, they're investor owner type company. They're not driving themselves. And if you're not present, like they're not really present to the amount of loads per week all the time that they're pulling, like distinctly. If they were present to that, then they could see, okay, I need to get in 1 to 2 more loads. That'll make the tremendous difference, because I'm paying this guy what I'm paying him no matter what. If I can get more productivity out of the guy, more productivity out of the equipment, then this will put me up about another, you know, 4,000-5,000 a month at the end of the day, right? A net profit after everything's all said and done. It could translate into almost 10,000 if I'm doing that every single week, day in and day out, week in and week out, right? So you want to understand number of loads, number of miles, the same reason, productivity. Can I get more, or am I doing too much with the equipment that I have? Deadhead miles. How many guys are looking at deadhead miles on a consistent basis, right? How do you know? Definitely looking at the rate per mile, total miles, including loaded and deadhead, not just the loaded miles. Cost per mile, total cost per mile, right? We want to understand that distinctly as well. Here goes your qualitative reality. On-time delivery percentage. Am I tracking that for my qualitative reality? What's going to give me the edge against my competition if I don't know what, how much we're on time by percentage? Well, I don't really know that there's anything to fix. I'm just kind of shooting in the dark with that. Then we have things like compliance. Now, compliance is a big deal because this lets you know how much risk you are exposed to inside of your operation. So, I'm running my company every day. I'm working hard, and all of a sudden, it can be taken away because I'm at a high level of risk. And it's like, oh my goodness, why did this happen to me? That's the tendency. Why did this happen to me? I work so hard. I'm just doing what I'm supposed to do out here, going and pulling loads and working so hard every day. And you were not tracking compliance rigorously, right? And because if you do this rigorously, then you can see where you're exposed to risk. Okay. What else? We also want to track, these key KPIs like revenue, direct costs, all your expenses with the receipts in a place where we can actually attach these expenses directly to the receipts to which they are related. Right? Is there a workflow for that? Is there a process for that? We track gross profit, net profit. And this is a big one here. All balance sheet accounts. So what is the balance sheet account? These are things like, of course, your bank accounts, cash on hand, credit card accounts, accounts receivable, right? People that owe you money. Accounts payable, people you owe money to. Lines of credit. And this includes factoring. If you're not aware, factoring is a line of credit, right? And you're actually borrowing money from them up front for your invoices, right? So you want to keep track of that as well. All your long-term loans, like business loans, and similar loans of the sorts. And maybe you have private notes too. Some people have private notes. Like people go out and get others to invest in their company in return for a percentage of interest on a note due and payable at a certain point of time. And it could be years down the line. And you want to make sure that those are being recorded as well, right? Fixed assets, this is a big deal. There's so many people that come to me inside of what we do, and I look at a balance sheet and they don't have their trucks, their trailers, any other property or equipment listed on the balance sheet, right? So there's an understatement of the actual worth of the company because these aren't listed, right? And here's the impact of that. I don't know what's going on clearly. I don't know what these assets are producing me. Clearly, I'm not understanding the cost of it, like in the way of depreciation or even my taxes, right? So there's a big impact to not having these things on the books and understanding how they're impacting you, right? So those are some things on the actual financial side. Now, KPIs. We just talked about a couple of those things, like what am I getting for the return? Return on equity. That's a big key performance indicator overall for financial health. Return on investment. This is what people will look like. Let's say that you're trying to build this company to not just be in the driver's seat or not just keep working so hard, like day in and day out for the rest of your life. Maybe you want to make this business scalable or legacy willable, right? Well, what is it producing? Is it a worthwhile investment for somebody to own? All right, so return on investment and return on invested capital are key things that you want to understand inside of the financial literacy to help you know if that's the case, right? Growth rates, how fast am I growing? Profitability per lane, we talked about that earlier, and there's so many other things that go into the KPIs inside of trucking. What I just gave you there for examples are KPIs that can be used in any industry, all right, with exception to lane profitability. But you definitely want to have available at any time that you want to look, the clear numbers in front of you so that you can understand the financial position of your trucking company. So let's talk about this for a little while, like TMS, trucking management software. And I'll let you know that the TMS in and of itself is not going to be enough. When we asked the question before, a lot of you are familiar with QuickBooks, which is great because you're going to need something like that in addition to a TMS. You can't just have QuickBooks and expect to run your trucking business. You can't just have a TMS and expect to run your trucking business completely, because there are gaps where one serves and another doesn't. Right. So today in our conversation, we're going to talk about the TMS and what that does and the things that we're going to look at inside of that will really help you make the decision on how to choose one and how to use one. Okay. And what they're for. And there's a couple on here too, man. Like a couple extra ones. Actually, one extra one on here is Rama. Rama Logistics. Does anybody actually know Rama Logistics software? Anybody ever hear that one?
I haven't.
No? Yeah. Not a whole lot of people have heard of that one, but the thing about Rama Logistics software is that it has something called EDI capability, which is really great in that. All right. Now, some of these don't have EDI capabilities, and you want to be aware of that too. Then we're going to talk about those things in just a few minutes. Okay. So when we're looking at a TMS, what are we looking for? What do we want out of our TMS? Good question. One of the main things that you want out of your TMS is effective fleet tracking. All right, so what do we mean by fleet tracking? Drivers and equipment. We want to monitor this thing pretty tight. When we add a truck to our fleet, we want to have a workflow. And when I say workflow, there's going to be a standard procedure that we have inside of our company that is done without question. It is a routine, it is a habit that's embedded into how you do your business. That's a workflow. Okay. So for example, I have a new truck that I purchased. So when I purchased that truck, the workflow is, okay, well now we go down and we made the decision. Well, first there should be a workflow inside of the decision-making process to buy the truck, right? We're not going to talk about that right now. But once we've made the decision, there's a workflow to actually get that truck added or onboarded to the fleet. Okay. So what that can look like is, I have all the documentation, like the purchase agreement of sale for that, or the bill of sale for that. And I'm actually storing that electronically as well as physically somewhere, right? The somewhere electronically is in your TMS for that bill of sale. It's associated with that particular vehicle. So you understand what was purchased, when it was purchased, how much it was purchased for, and the terms of the agreement. It's attached to that forever inside of your software, never to be lost. All right. And then you can have a physical copy of it as well. So there's a workflow for that to do that. I take this information, enter it into the system, and it's there. Image of the document is attached to it, PDF format, boom. As well as all of the registration information, insurance information, IFTA information attached to it. Then we have all the maintenance documents, like when was the inspection done on the truck? When was the last PMS done on the truck? There's a workflow to keep track of those things, attach it to that vehicle. And a TMS will allow you to do that if it does have those capabilities. Most of them do. Okay. And then we can have expiration dates attached to it. Like when we put those documents in there, there comes the option there to put the date of expiration inside the system. And then there's an alert that happens at a period at which you choose, interval at which you choose. I want to be aware of these expirations about 60 days ahead of time, right? Or 90 days ahead of time. It sends me a flag up, say, okay, this truck is due for a DOT inspection, in 30 days. Let's get this thing scheduled right now so that we actually put this in, right? This eliminates the need to actually remember these things, recall these things about each truck that you have on the fleet. Now, if I can start this for one truck that I have on the fleet, imagine if this process is working with the one truck, I can actually duplicate that for the next and the next and the next. And it's not going to be something where it's going to be unmanageable. It's going to be a very manageable process if I have a TMS, right? The same process can happen for trailers, not just trucks, right? Any equipment that you have on the fleet. The truck numbers can be put in there and assigned. Drivers can be assigned to whatever unit inside of the system. You can keep track of your drivers the same way that you keep track of all the equipment, their hire date, their pay rates, their CDL expiration, their MVR, their DOT physicals. All of that can be stored here electronically on a TMS with the same process to alert when anything is going to expire. What else? Settlements. Oh my goodness. If you have people that you're paying out, how much time can be saved if it's just automatically calculated every time they pull a load? You set your drivers up with the same type of workflows and you give them the pay rates and everything. And every time they drop a load off, it's calculated for that period and it eliminates the extra work. All you need to do is approve and print and email. No more physical data entry for things that are very simple. All right. Now, the other thing is, like some TMSs, they don't have a good setup for if you're hiring carriers to drive for you. Let's say you're actually brokering out freight and you want to produce settlements to a carrier, and then let's say that carrier has drivers for their truck. And let's actually take it this. This is a common thing here. Let's say you hire an owner operator. They don't have their own authority. They're running underneath your authority. And then, you know, the drivers, they hire. And their drivers need to be paid, but you're going to be cutting the checks to their drivers. So some TMSs will make that process very simple and easy and straightforward, whereas others don't really allow you to create anything outside of just the driver pay. In a perfect world, I'll be able to create a settlement for the carrier that includes all the deductions for what was paid to the driver, as well as the fuel costs, as well as whatever costs that were agreed upon for them leasing onto your authority. And then the drivers will get their own settlements as well that indicate what they're being paid for the loads that they drove or pulled. Right? That's in a perfect world. Now, in some cases, the TMS doesn't allow for that. And in some cases, they do. ITS dispatch is good for having that process work perfectly. All right, so this is a biggie, man. Dispatching, right? Dispatching and communications. So again, workflow, what's the procedure? What's the process that's duplicatable inside of your business? If you have a TMS, they're designed for this process, right? To when you book a load and you have something that you're looking to give to the drivers and send to the drivers, the system will allow you to send it to them via email or via text message. It'll also allow for location tracking and something called geofencing. Who knows what geofencing is? Raise your hand if you know what geofencing is. Okay, I'm not seeing any hands raised. Good, man. You guys are in the right place. I'm giving you some stuff. I need to be on the billing clock right now because this is some stuff here. It's geofencing. All right. So anytime a truck enters a location, let's say there's a radius on the actual satellite on the map. When somebody enters into a specific radius, let's say it's within 2 miles of a facility, like an address, there's like an imaginary fence around that location-wise. So if the truck is being monitored for location, when it enters inside of that fence, it transitions the load to update it to being either arriving at shipper/receiver or leaving shipper/receiver, which means unloaded, loaded, whatever. And it automatically updates their status in the system. All right, so that's geofencing. When they come into a location, and it automatically updates the route. Right, so TMS can do that for you with location tracking and through that process, it can do the check calls and everything for you. So you're not constantly calling over to brokers to update the route, or they're not constantly calling you at 2 in the morning to get a load update when you're actually taking your your 10-hour break and getting some sleep. Right, so you can have some peace of mind knowing that they can actually get automated check calls and updates on the load, and they don't have to continually call you for those check calls and updates. From a one fleet perspective, one unit fleet perspective, it might not seem as though you need these things, but when you have these workflows inside of your 1 or 2 unit operation and it becomes duplicatable, now you can have this process work for a fleet of 10, 20, 30, 100 vehicles. 100 units, and it's not that much more work involved because you have the workflows in place. Load planning. Good TMS allows you to do this very easily. Inside of it, you can a really good one integrates load boards that you use into the software. So when you go into the TMS, you can see all load boards in one place. It'll show you what's available so that you can actually plan out your freight. And then once you find the load that you're going to pick to actually book, it has a process that's pretty seamless. So you just click and boom, it's actually inside of the planner for dispatching, ready to dispatch directly from there. How much time does that save? All right. Not only that, it's really it's another duplicatable process that can be trained to somebody. All right. And we talked about EDI capabilities. So what is EDI capability? Raise your hand if you know what that is, EDI capability. All right, no hands raised for that either.
Never heard of it.
All right. So EDI capabilities. It basically means that there's certain, like, these larger companies that you're going to book freight from, these larger brokers, they're going to use this thing, right? And it's basically says that my system communicates with your system, right? Very well. So when they create their load in the system for you to book it, it can automatically be exported to your system because it's like reading one another. So like now your rate cons come through and it gets through your TMS very easily. All your paperwork goes through, even when you're looking to submit documents directly to the broker for payment. If you're not using a factoring company, using the broker directly, all your paperwork can be submitted through the EDI, right? The computer software talks to one another very easily. That's EDI capability. Okay, another time-saving tactic inside of the software. So hopefully you're getting the idea. I really the thing that I want you to understand is you really want to use these to track what's going on in your fleet. And we're getting to a conversation about time saving as well, right? But this gives you a real good way to measure and monitor what's happening inside of your fleet. All right, so the other thing here is invoicing and accounting, accounting software integration rather, right? So loads that we actually book inside of a TMS, they are easily translated into invoices to be billed out to the customer, whether it's a broker, direct shipper, or factoring company, whatever, right? So that's easy converted inside the TMS to an invoice. So on one side, that's revenue. That shows you good, like accurately what the revenue is for the loads that you pull, right? And that's really what a TMS is good for on the accounting side, is showing that. So I'm tracking revenue. TMS really does that for me. What it does not do is account for your expenses 100%. It can be a process where you enter expenses into your TMS in like receipts and everything, and there's always going to be a gap because it's not accounting for everything. For example, it may track the factoring fee that's involved with it because of the type of TMS that it is, and then if there's maintenance that comes up for a truck and you're really using your TMS to track the maintenance for the truck or for the consortium expense that you're using to screen your drivers and everything, it may pick up those things. But then there are all those other expenses that go along with you running your company that is just not picking up on because it's not built that way. That's why you need an accounting software in addition to this, is because where the TMS kind of falls short on the accounting side, the accounting software fills in all of those gaps. And from the reverse aspect of that, where the accounting software fills all the accounting gaps, it does not really take care of the compliance and the operations and the fleet management side